Petitioners ready with your next witness?
Yes, we call Mr. Pacheco.
Good afternoon. May I remind you, you are still under oath.
Good afternoon, Mr. Pacheco.
Good afternoon.
Do you have a copy of your affidavit dated June 5th, 2019 in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Were you present this morning and this afternoon for all of the department's testimony in this matter?
Yes.
If I could draw your attention to your affidavit, the last full paragraph, would you read that for us?
Excuse me. The earliest date on which I first knew of Mass DEP's request to Alpha Analytical for the additional data was Thursday, May 9th or Friday, May 10th, 2019. I was informed verbally by Glenn Keith.
Describe for me that conversation with Mr. Keith.
It was, well, as you can see, I don't remember the day, but it was a rather casual interaction concerning the hearing, and it was mentioned to me that there was going to be data, additional data provided to the department.
And how did that casual conversation come about?
I don't remember.
Do you and Mr. Keith work together on a regular basis?
We had been working together that week on preparing for the hearing.
And did you hear Mr. Keith's testimony this morning that on May 8th, 2019, Kathy Kiley informed him that Alpha Analytical reported that the additional data would be available by that Friday, May 10th?
Did he make me aware of that?
No, did you hear that testimony?
Oh, yes, I did.
And did Mr. Keith advise you of that development during your meeting on either May 9 or May 10?
No.
When did you first learn that Alpha Analytical was going to produce additional data?
Well, on May 9th or 10th.
Maybe we misunderstood each other. That was my last question. Did you learn that during your conversation with Mr. Keith?
Yes.
And was that of significance to you?
At the moment, at the time when I learned about it, it was not significant to me. I was very deep in preparing for the modeling portion of this hearing.
Why did he tell you that at all?
I don't know.
What was your next interaction with anyone at the department concerning Alpha Analytical data after your conversation with Mr. Keith on May 9th or May 10th?
The Monday morning meeting, I believe it was at 10 o'clock.
And who was present?
3 attorneys, or 4 attorneys, and Glenn Keith, myself, and Sandy Beard, as you mentioned, came in late.
Without disclosing to us what your attorney said, what was the general purpose of that meeting?
Well, the purpose of the meeting was preparing for the hearing.
And during that meeting, was there discussion of the additional Alpha Analytics data received by the department?
Very brief, more of an announcement to the team in the room by Mr. Keith.
And what did that announcement consist of?
I don't remember the details. That there was additional data coming from Alpha Analytics, that we would be receiving it soon, if not already having some of it. I don't remember any details beyond that.
Sitting here today, have you reviewed the additional data produced by Alpha Analytics?
I have not.
Did you hear the testimony this morning from Mr. Keith concerning the distinction between a TO15 SIM EPA test and a TO15 SIM CAM test?
Yes.
Were you aware of that distinction?
I was not aware of that particular distinction until today.
Were you aware of the existence of different air sampling test results that reviewed different numbers of volatile organic compounds before today?
Yes.
And what was your understanding of that?
That TO15 allows you to, I'm not sure that I fully understand the rationale behind this, but it does allow you to, individual labs to come up with their own list.
Were you involved in the request to Alpha Analytics for a particular list of data in this proceeding?
No, I was not.
When Alpha Analytical produced its original data set, did you review that information?
I did not.
After your meeting on Monday, May 13th, with Mr. Keith, Dr. Baird, and others, did you have any further communications with the department concerning Alpha Analytical's production of additional data?
After the 13th?
Correct.
I think that was a Monday. I think probably the next time I heard about it was on the Wednesday, that it was in-house and under review.
And how did you learn that information?
From Mr. Keith.
And what does that mean, that it was in-house and under review?
Well, that we had received it and it was being, going through some type of a review process.
Were you involved in the review process?
I was not.
Why did Mr. Keith tell you that the Alpha Analytical data was in-house and under review?
Well, he didn't tell me personally, he told the group, the DEP witness group and our attorneys.
This was another meeting on Wednesday, May 15th?
Yes.
Was there any?
It was just a quick meeting before the hearing started.
Was there any discussion during that Wednesday, May 15th meeting about disclosing the existence of this additional Alpha Analytical data to the petitioners in this proceeding?
I think that there was probably mention of releasing it, not specifically to the petitioners, just my understanding of the discussion was just releasing it to the public on our website.
And that was during the morning of Wednesday, May 15th, 2019, before the first day of testimony began in this proceeding?
Correct.
How long did that meeting last?
Well, we had a meeting every day that, every morning before the hearing, so it was maybe 30 minutes.
Where do you meet?
Excuse me?
Where physically do you meet?
In the conference room on the 3rd floor.
And I apologize if you answered this already, but for the Wednesday, May 15th, 2019 meeting in the 3rd floor office before the first day of testimony in this proceeding began, who was present in addition to yourself and Mr. Keith?
All the attorneys and Mr. Cushing and Dr. Baird. We weren't all present for the entirety of those early morning meetings.
Let me ask you a more focused question. During the meeting on the 3rd floor on the morning of Wednesday, May 15th, 2019, in addition to yourself and Mr. Keith, who was present for the portion of the meeting where there was discussion about releasing the new alpha analytical data to the public?
I don't remember. You're asking me to name exactly who was there when that brought up. I don't remember that.
But you do remember that during some point of that meeting, Mr. Cushing and Dr. Baird were also present?
Yes.
Did you participate in the decision-making process to release the alpha analytical data to the public?
No.
After that Wednesday morning, May 15th meeting, did you participate in any additional discussion with the department concerning the subject of releasing the alpha analytical data to the public?
No.
Was there another meeting after testimony concluded on Wednesday, May 15th?
We had brief meetings at the end of the hearings each day. I do not recall whether that was actually brought up during the Wednesday post-hearing.
And just so the record's clear, when you're referring to that, you're referring to releasing the alpha analytical data to the public?
No, I'm referring to just general recap of how the day went.
Right, I think we're in agreement here. You don't recall one way or the other whether the afternoon meeting on Wednesday, May 15th, after the first day of testimony concluded, you don't remember if the subject of disclosing the alpha analytical data to the public came up or not?
I don't recall.
Was there a Thursday morning meeting before the second day of testimony began on
Yes.
May 16th? Did the subject of releasing the alpha analytical data to the public come up during the Thursday morning meeting?
Objection to the extent this may involve conversations with attorneys.
I think he can answer if there was a discussion without getting into the substance. So,
Well, if I recall correctly, the discussion was directed at our attorneys for counsel on Thursday morning. It was brief.
And again, that's concerning the subject of releasing the alpha analytical data to the public, correct?
I believe so. Yes.
Were you present during the lunchtime meeting with Section Chief Cushing on Thursday, May 16, 2019?
In Gary Moran's office, yes.
Who was present for that meeting?
Gary Moran, Glenn Keith, Tom Cushing, Mike Dingle, and myself.
And again, not getting into what your attorneys stated was the subject of disclosing the alpha analytical data to the public discussed during that lunchtime meeting on Thursday, May 16th.
Based on my recollection of that meeting, that was actually not the topic of the meeting. The topic of the meeting was Gary wanting to get a better understanding of the decision-making process that goes into deciding what compounds to model.
Was there a post-hearing meeting following the second day of testimony on Thursday, May 16, 2019?
Yes.
And during that post-hearing meeting on Thursday, May 16, was the subject of disclosing the additional alpha analytical data discussed?
Yes.
And who participated in that meeting?
The same team, myself. I mean, present in the room. All the attorneys, I think. Mr. Keith, Mr. Cushing, myself. I'm not sure about Dr. Baird.
And at any point prior to that meeting Thursday, after the second day of testimony, was a decision made in your presence to release the data to the public?
There was discussion in that Thursday post-hearing meeting of the process that was imminent for releasing the data.
So it wasn't until Thursday post-hearing that things came to a conclusion as far as releasing the data is concerned?
Yes.
And during any of those meetings that you described, was there any discussion about providing the petitioners in this appeal notice that the additional alpha analytical data existed before the data was disclosed to the public?
To the best of my recollection, I don't remember there being a distinction between releasing the data to the parties to the hearing and on the website, obviously to the public. To me, it was just, we're ready to release the data.
Thank you, Mr. Pacheco. I have no further questions.
Mr. Mioris, Mr. Goldrosen.
We have no questions from this witness. Well, to the extent that this may result in any misunderstanding before the hearing is closed, I'd like an opportunity to confer with other petitioners' counsels before the hearing is closed.
With regard to whether you have questions for Mr. Pacheco?
No, if we could just, this is the last witness, the last scheduled witness.
Correct.
I don't have any questions, this might be the end of the testimony, I'm not sure. But I would like an opportunity before we close the hearing to speak with my co-counsel, the other petitioners, in case we have any additional requests we want to.
Okay, well, when we're done with Mr. Pacheco's testimony, we will take a 10-minute break, and during that time, you can confer with whomever you wish.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Goldrosen, any questions?
Yes, I do. Good afternoon, Mr. Pacheco. Mr. Pacheco, DEP did require the applicant to model certain air toxics for purposes of the emissions modeling. Is that correct?
Yes.
How did you arrive at the list of those substances to be modeled? Do you have a standard list for that?
Objection, this is an issue beyond the alpha data.
I think, I'm going to overrule the objection because I'm sensing a foundation being laid.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There is no standard list. It would be determined by the emissions of the facility going through the plan approval process.
And was 1,3-butadiene one of the substances modeled?
Yes,
for
it was.
emissions? It was.
Yes.
And you stated that you did not look at the alpha analytics data that was compiled for VOCs and background levels. Is that correct?
Correct, I did not look at it.
And is that your practice then when there are VOCs being modeled for emissions to see whether the same, let me withdraw that. Did you consider whether it would be useful to know whether the same substances that were being modeled in the emissions were being modeled for the background levels?
Well, my understanding of the data collection, the objective of the data collection was related to the health impact assessment, and I did not participate in the health impact assessment at all. But other than, I'll retract that, the at all part. I did review a few sections of the health impact assessment that were related to modeling. But so no, I didn't really have a need to understand the data that was sampled for the modeling done for the plan approval.
And were you ever asked to review the request that was being made to Alpha for sampling back before the July, August samples?
No, I was not asked or involved in any way.
I have no further questions.
Any redirect, Mr. Dino? Thank you, Mr. Pacheco. We'll take a 10-minute break, well, 15, come back at 3:15.